Chapter 14. Alicia woke up. She was sitting up in bed next to her son, with a book still held in her hands after finally tiring out that night. It was dark outside. A glance at the clock showed it was a little after 1 in the morning. Kenny was still and the house was quiet. What had woken her up? Then she heard a scuffling noise by her front door. Were those footsteps? Was that the sound of someone trying to open her front door? Her heart started pounding, and her mind started cycling through all the horrible things that could be happening. Any other day, she would have walked herself through her breathing techniques to calm her anxiety. She would have told herself how unlikely it was for someone to be trying to enter her house. Yet tonight, she had a strange man sleeping on her couch, and she was willing to err on the side of paranoid. She went to her bedroom door and listened. It was quiet, but she still hesitated before unlocking the door. "You are a brave, strong woman," she told herself as she took a deep breath. But even then she only cracked open the door, just enough to peek through. Except she could not see anything but darkness. Alicia wanted nothing more than to go back to bed and pretend that there were not shuffling noises outside her house. Before she had her son, she would have happily hidden in her closet, hoping that everything would turn out okay. She didn't have that option anymore. She went to the nightstand and picked up her cell phone, slipping it in her pocket. Then she picked up the knife, sliding off the protective sleeve, and walked into the hallway. More sounds came from the front door, so she carefully peeked into the living room. The couch was empty. Alicia found herself slipping into the same mindset she had while training. She was focused and ready. So when she saw movement coming from the kitchen, she had gone to a fighting stance and was slashing out before she had even fully processed the situation. The dark figure moved faster and had caught her wrist before the knife made contact. She moved her body weight to break the grasp when she realized the figure was Sadar, and there was still noise coming from the front door. "We need to go," he spoke quietly, letting go of her wrist. "What's going on?" she asked. Voices carried through her door. They were deep voices that spoke a language that Alicia could not understand. There was a crash against her door, and then the noises stopped. Alicia went to speak, but Sadar put his finger to his lips again and then pointed at Kenny in the bed. When Alicia just stood there staring at him, he started moving his finger back and forth between Alicia and Kenny. Alicia stared at him, baffled at what he was doing. Finally, Sadar gave in and spoke in a light whisper. "We need to leave. Go grab Kenny." Alicia walked over to the bed and began to pick up her son. She stopped, realizing that the knife was still in her hand. Her fingers froze around the handle, unwilling to let it go. She could feel herself shutting down, all the fear blackening the edge of her awareness. The knife was her only source of protection, but she pushed back at the panic and dropped the knife on the bedside table. Then she reached for Kenny, picking him up slowly, trying not to wake him. He curled into her and settled into her arms. Alicia then headed back to Sadar. Her eyes widened when she heard a noise on her front door again. Sadar motioned them into the bathroom. The window slid open soundlessly, and Alicia couldn't help thinking that she was glad that she had gotten it unstuck earlier in the night. Sadar stuck his head out the window looking around. Then he went feet first out the window and made the 4-foot drop without a sound. He was gone for a few seconds, a few very long heartbeats, before his head reappeared in the window. He tried to reach for Kenny, but Alicia backed up out of his reach. She waited until Sadar moved before, still holding on to Kenny's sleeping form, she climbed so her legs were sitting on the windowsill. She slid them both through the window opening and then dropped down to the ground. "Take him to the end of the block and wait for me," Sadar said. Then he disappeared to the front of the apartment building. The window had let them out on a small grassy area in front of the parking lot. The lot was lit by a lamp on each side, but one of the lamps kept fading out and then popping back at full luminosity. Even then they were barely bright enough to allow Alicia to make out the shadowed cars. The night was quiet, with just the occasional buzz of a car driving on the nearby freeway. Alicia put her back against the apartment building with her drowsy son tight in her arms. She just needed a second to think. Why would someone break into my apartment if they had already sent Sadar after us? But her thoughts were interrupted by screaming from her apartment. Their words were thick with frustration and malice. Then there was a loud crash, causing Alicia to jump. There were more crashes, and Alicia was fairly certain they were tearing apart her apartment. She glanced down at her son, but he had fallen back asleep. Alicia tried not to jostle him as she kept low against the building, walking towards the street. The complex was nestled around single-story houses. The cars were all tucked up in driveways, and the lawns were nothing but manicured grass. The only objects were fences that barely went to her wrist. If anyone looked, they wouldn't be able to miss her. So she walked steadily towards the end of the block, trying not to be visible, but also trying not to appear suspicious if anyone happened to see her. At the end of the block, just around the corner, there was a large elm tree. The leaves were mostly raised off the ground, but the trunk was large enough for Alicia to feel like it was at least sort of hiding. When Kenny began to stir in her arms, she let him down. She swung her arms around in small motions, trying to get her muscles to stop hurting. He was too big for her to be carrying him now. "What happened?" Kenny said, voice thick with sleep. "Quiet. We don't want anyone to hear us if they're trying to find us." "Who were they?" Kenny tried to keep his voice down, but it still felt extremely loud to Alicia. "I don't know." She pulled out her cell phone and began to type out a text message to Christian. Alicia thought about all that had happened in the last day and decided to keep it short. "Someone tried to break into our house. We are safe." "Where is Sadar?" Kenny asked. "He told us to meet him here. I'm not sure where he is." Alicia realized that she was waiting for a man that she did not trust. For all she knew, he could have staged the whole situation in their house. Maybe this was all part of a plan to get them to leave. Alicia was still deciding what she should do when a silver four-door car pulled up in front of them. Alicia grabbed Kenny's hand and tried to get him up running. But before he had moved, the car window came down and Sadar appeared. "Get in." Alicia took a last look around and, without a better option, helped Kenny up. This time, he moved faster and was in the back seat where his booster seat was placed. Alicia looked at Sadar questioningly. He just stared back wordlessly. Alicia helped Kenny get his seatbelt on and then hopped in beside him. She had barely clicked her seatbelt before the car was moving again. Alicia tried to keep quiet. Her thoughts were racing through her head, and the world no longer made any sense. It lasted for less than 10 minutes before she finally caved in. "Who the—" Alicia looked at Kenny, still wide awake, and changed her words mid-sentence. "Heck were those people?" "I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know? I just left my house in the middle of the night. I just shimmied out of a bathroom window with my kid, and you don't know who was even at the house? Maybe they weren't there for us at all. Maybe it was just a drunk neighbor going to the wrong door." But even as she said it, she knew she was wrong. She remembered the anger in their voices and how they had ransacked the house. "I know they were elves, and they were doing more than just waiting outside your house. I think it was just two people. They were using earth magic and masking their movement. That is what woke me up, which means that they did not know I was there. They must have thought it was all humans, or that Kenny wouldn't know what he felt when they used their magic." "Why? I don't understand why they would come for us." Alicia felt the vibration of her phone. She pulled it out of her pocket and saw Christian's photo across the screen. She went to answer it, but before she could, the phone was ripped out of her hand. Alicia looked up to see Sadar leaning back from the driver's seat, with only one hand on the steering wheel. The other held her phone. "Hey!" she managed to say, but he had already rolled down his window and threw her phone out of it. "Why the hell did you do that?" "Mom," Kenny said, his eyes wide. "Why exactly did you just steal my phone and throw it out of the window?" She tried to keep from yelling, but the frustration still bit into her words. "That was a friend of mine. I need to let him know that we're safe." "Do you know how easy it is to track a cell phone?" "No, I don't. Do you? You could have asked me to turn it off. Did you need to drop it on the freeway? Do you think someone is going to hone in on my phone to find us?" She looked out the window. It was dark outside, but the streetlights illuminated the road enough to show that there was no one driving next to them. "I think you could have waited at least a few minutes and we would have been fine." "Turning off the phone would have been an acceptable solution." Sadar spoke as if every word was dragged from him. "It's a bit too late for that now." Alicia looked back longingly. She didn't have any of the numbers memorized, but at least the Taekwondo Studio's number was published. "Where are you going?" "Right now, I am just driving as far away as possible." "The Grand Canyon," Kenny said. Alicia looked at her son in the night glow. He was wide awake, enjoying the lights streaking off the side of the freeway. He looked eager and excited, like this was the start of a grand adventure. I don't know about that, Sadar said. I think we need to lay low for a while and figure out where we need to go next. I thought you had it all worked out. You seemed to know what to do before those elves showed up. Yes, Kenny needs tutors. I need to figure out the best place for us to go now. You seemed pretty set on taking him to see his father. Is that where we are heading? I think that is the best place for him to go. For now, we will find some place to lay low. Alicia studied Sadar as he drove. He looked straight ahead, his face an unmoving mask. But Alicia had learned how to navigate the world without naturally being able to read people. She had to learn to pay attention, and sometimes it was what people didn't say that was important. You don't know where he is, do you? He trusts me. I have been by his side since he was born. I have devoted my entire life to the royal family. Sadar growled. His hands tightened around the steering wheel until Alicia was afraid it was going to break. I guess that answers my question. Alicia realized that she had pushed enough, or perhaps too much, decided to keep her mouth shut for the time being. They kept driving. Kenny, lulled by the motion of the car, fell back to sleep. Alicia watched as they started to leave the city behind. The road turned into a 4-lane road, and the only light was the headlights of the cars. Her mind started looping the events of the last few days like a reel of a movie on repeat. She was missing something. Why didn't Sadar know where the king was if he had stood by his side for so many years? Who could possibly have broken into their home? But there was another idea, one that Alicia could not brush off. She told herself that there was nothing she could do to change the situation, but for all her trying to talk herself down, the question blurted out of her mouth anyway. Where did you get this car? What? Sadar seemed startled out of his own contemplation. The car. Where did it come from? I stole it. You stole it? Wow, you don't even have remorse, do you? Look, what did you expect me to do? Sadar glanced back at her as he spoke. We could not have taken your car. Elves may not live on this side, but even we have connections. How long do you think it would be before they found us? That doesn't make it right. It came out as a whine, and realizing it, Alicia slumped further into her seat. Did you want to be caught? No, Alicia said. But she also knew that she could never justify stealing a car. I did what I had to do to get us out of there. The world is not as black and white as you seem to think it is. Everything is not good or bad. Everything is mostly areas of gray, and you do what you need to do to get by. Sadar stared straight ahead as he spoke, and Alicia wondered if he was talking more to himself than to her. That sounds like a way of justifying anything. If there is no right and wrong, then the world turns into chaos. Alicia stared out the window at the calm of the night. She could see the lights of a town in the distance, and she wondered about the families going about their normal, everyday routines. She relaxed at the thought. The world is chaos. Everyone is out to help themselves and do what they need to do to get by. Alicia found the idea depressing. However, she also could not argue with it. Instead, she continued to focus outside the car. The side of the freeway was now surrounded by large evergreens that hid the lights of the town completely from view. They won't notice it is gone, Sadar said, mistaking her quiet for disagreement. Who won't notice? Alicia was startled by the continued conversation. The couple that I took it from. I left them an illusion of their car, so they won't even notice it is missing. If you can create an illusion of a car, why don't we just drive that? Alicia asked. Magic is difficult to explain. Sadar paused before continuing. I can create an illusion of a car and leave it. It becomes separate from me, but it won't work. It will last for a time and then fade away. Other illusions can help modify something already in existence, but that requires contact with the magic user. It also requires a connection that is not illusion. I couldn't just create a working car without something to build it upon. Then why leave the illusion? Alicia asked. Why not just take the car? Either way, they will wake up in the morning and not have a working vehicle. It's better this way. It gives us more time to drive before they notice it is missing. Sadar seemed to sense Alicia's frustration because he hurriedly continued. Besides, this way they will think it is a mechanical failure and send it in for repairs. They can get a rental and continue on their day. It is much easier on them than the vehicle just going missing. Besides, I am careful who I take it from. I try to do the least damage necessary. None of that makes it right, Alicia grumbled. No, but I did the best I could in the situation. If you have a better idea, then I am all ears.